In 2024, director George Miller returned to the brutal, dusty world of Mad Max with a powerful prequel titled Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga. This film takes us back before the events of Mad Max, Fury Road, and tells the origin story of one of the most unforgettable characters in modern action cinema, Imperator Furiosa. While Fury Road was centered on Max Rokitansky and his high-speed escape across the Wasteland, this new chapter shifts the focus entirely to Furiosa and shows us how she became the fierce, battle-hardened warrior we met in 2015. Set in a post-apocalyptic desert where resources are scarce and survival is everything, Furiosa expands the Mad Max universe in deeper and more emotional ways. Instead of just non-stop vehicular chaos, this film blends action with long-term storytelling. It follows Furiosa from childhood to adulthood, showing her kidnapping, her suffering, and her relentless fight for freedom. The story is not just about revenge. It is about identity, resilience, and reclaiming power in a world ruled by tyrants. Anya Taylor-Joy steps into the role of Furiosa, taking over from Charlize Theron, who originally played the character in Fury Road. Taylor-Joy brings a quiet intensity to the role, portraying Furiosa as both vulnerable and determined. The film also introduces a major new villain played by Chris Hemsworth, whose presence adds a different type of chaos to the Wasteland. His character is unpredictable, theatrical, and dangerous in ways that feel fresh for the franchise. Unlike traditional action films that rely only on spectacle, Furiosa aims to tell a character-driven story over several years. It shows how a young girl taken from her homeland grows into a powerful figure within a violent empire. The movie explores how trauma shapes her choices and how every loss fuels her strength. The world remains harsh and unforgiving, but this time we experience it through a more personal lens. George Miller once again delivers high-speed chases, explosive action sequences, and large-scale desert battles. However, this film feels more like a tragic epic than a non-stop thrill ride. It builds its story slowly, allowing viewers to understand the emotional journey behind Furiosa's silence and strength. The desert landscapes, war machines, and extreme characters are still there, but they now serve a deeper narrative purpose. For fans of the Mad Max series, this movie answers long-standing questions. Where did Furiosa come from? How did she lose her arm? How did she rise within Immortan Joe's empire? For new viewers, the film works as a standalone origin story. You do not need to watch previous entries to understand her struggle. The emotional core is universal: a stolen childhood, a fight for survival, and a woman determined to take control of her destiny. Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, is not just an action movie. It is a survival story, a revenge tale, and a character study wrapped in fire, metal, and sand. It expands the mythology of the Wasteland while staying true to the raw energy that defines the franchise. The film invites audiences to look beyond explosions and engines and focus on the human cost of living in a broken world. This introduction sets the stage for a deeper exploration of the movie. From its production background to its storytelling structure and performances, there is much to unpack. The world of Mad Max has always been loud and chaotic, but at its heart are stories about survival and hope. In this film, that heart beats through Furiosa. Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga, is a 2024 post-apocalyptic action epic directed and produced by George Miller, the visionary filmmaker who created the Mad Max franchise decades ago. It expands the universe with a focused origin story. The film was released worldwide in May 2024 by Warner Bros. Pictures. The movie serves as a prequel to Mad Max: Fury Road, which premiered in 2015 and became a global success. Instead of following Max Rokitansky, the story centers entirely on Imperator Furiosa and traces her journey from childhood to adulthood across many dangerous years in the wasteland of brutal survival. Anya Taylor-Joy plays the younger Furiosa, taking over the role originally portrayed by Charlize Theron. Her casting brought a different physical presence while maintaining the fierce determination that defines the character. Taylor-Joy trained extensively for action sequences and intense stunt work to prepare for the demanding desert production schedule conditions. Chris Hemsworth stars as the film's primary antagonist, a warlord named Dementus. Unlike previous villains in the series, Dementus is charismatic, theatrical, and driven by ambition as much as cruelty. Hemsworth transforms his image with heavy prosthetics, elaborate costumes, and an unpredictable personality that shapes political balance of the Wasteland. Tom Burke appears as Praetorian Jack, a key ally in Furiosa's early life. His character becomes a mentor figure who teaches her driving, strategy, and survival skills inside the dangerous convoy culture. Their bond adds emotional weight and shapes her understanding of loyalty and sacrifice in a ruthless world system. George Miller co-wrote the screenplay with longtime collaborator Nico Lathouris. The script was developed over many years as Miller imagined a detailed backstory for Furiosa while preparing Fury Road. This long development period allowed the filmmakers to map out timelines, factions, and shifting alliances across the desert territories with precision. The film was shot primarily in Australia, continuing the franchise tradition. After earlier plans to film in Namibia changed, production returned to Australian landscapes that could double as the harsh wasteland. Large practical sets and vehicle rigs were constructed to support real stunts and large-scale action sequences safely executed. Filming began in 2022 and lasted several months under demanding conditions. Cast and crew worked in extreme heat, managing complex vehicle choreography and elaborate stunt coordination. The production required precise planning because many sequences involved moving convoys, explosions, and large numbers of performers across open terrain at high speeds daily. Furiosa carries an official runtime of approximately 2 hours and 28 minutes. This extended length allows the story to span many years and show major turning points in her transformation. The pacing balances quieter character moments with explosive action chapters that feel almost like separate episodes within one saga. The movie was produced by Warner Bros. Pictures in association with Village Roadshow Pictures. These studios previously backed Fury Road and continued their partnership with Miller to expand the franchise universe. The budget reflected the scale of its action and long production schedule across remote desert regions and urban facilities. The story timeline stretches over more than a decade in the Wasteland. It begins with a young Furiosa living in the green place of many mothers before she is violently taken away. From there, the narrative tracks her captivity, escape attempts, and eventual rise within Immortan Joe's powerful war machine. The film received a wide theatrical release in multiple international markets. It premiered at major film festivals before opening to general audiences, building anticipation among longtime fans. Marketing emphasized its epic scale, character focus, and the return to Miller's high-intensity practical filmmaking style that defined earlier installments in theaters. Critics highlighted the ambition of telling a long-form origin story within an action franchise. Many reviews focused on Anya Taylor-Joy's controlled performance and Hemsworth's surprising transformation. Some commentators compared its structure to a mythic epic rather than a straightforward chase film like Fury Road from the previous decade installment. Audience expectations were shaped by the massive success of Fury Road. That earlier film won multiple Academy Awards and set a new standard for practical action filmmaking. Furiosa therefore carried pressure to deliver both spectacle and emotional depth while expanding the mythology of the Wasteland for long-time devoted fans worldwide. The rating for the film reflects its intense violence and mature themes. Like previous entries in the franchise, it contains extended action scenes, disturbing imagery, and harsh survival situations. These elements contribute to a gritty tone that stays consistent with the established world of Mad Max created by Miller originally. Furiosa stands as both a continuation and an expansion of the Mad Max legacy. By focusing on a single character's rise, it deepens the emotional stakes of the larger saga. It also reinforces George Miller's reputation for blending ambitious world-building with relentless action and bold cinematic storytelling at scale. Overall, the basic information surrounding Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, reveals a large-scale production built on years of planning. From casting and writing to filming and release, every stage reflects the ambition to honor the franchise while charting new territory in modern action cinema history for global audiences everywhere. In a world scorched by nuclear fire, where the earth had blistered into rust and ash and the sky burned like a wound that refused to heal, there existed a hidden miracle untouched by the surrounding madness, a sanctuary known as the Green Place of Many Mothers. Decades after the apocalypse devoured civilization, Australia had become a radioactive graveyard ruled by warlords, scavengers, and roving killers who worshipped engines and violence. Yet deep within a pocket of forest that somehow defied extinction, fresh water flowed, fruit ripened on trees, and women guarded the last memory of a balanced world. The Green Place was not just land, it was legacy. It was here that young Furiosa grew up, fierce and curious, racing through trees with her friend Valkyrie, climbing branches heavy with peaches, laughing beneath a sky that, for a fleeting moment, felt almost innocent. But innocence in the wasteland is fragile, and hope makes noise in a quiet world. The distant growl of engines drifted through the trees like a warning from the future. Furiosa heard it before she saw the danger. Raiders. The rebels. A biker horde that thrived on destruction and conquest, leaving only smoke and bones in their wake. Understanding instantly what discovery would mean for her home, Furiosa acted with instinct beyond her years. She crept toward the strangers' machines and sliced their fuel lines, determined to cripple their escape before they could trace the path back to the Green Place. For a heartbeat, she almost succeeded. Then one of them saw her. Childhood ended in that moment. Rough hands seized her, and she was dragged screaming into the dust as engines roared back to life. Before they carried her away, Furiosa blew a whistle that cut through the forest like a blade. It was a signal her mother would recognize. Mary Jabassa, warrior of the Vuvalini and protector of the Green Place, heard it and knew instantly that her daughter was in danger. She and the other women mounted their bikes and raced toward the sound, but the raiders were already vanishing into the open desert with Furiosa bound and helpless. Mary refused to surrender her child to the wasteland. With the Vuvalini general riding beside her, she pursued the Rubilis across endless dunes, dust clouds rising like storm fronts ahead. They caught up quickly, but Mary made a painful decision. The Green Place needed its general alive. Mary would continue alone. Armed with precision and fueled by fury, she hunted the bikers across the desert one by one, shooting those who had glimpsed her homeland so that no survivor could ever reveal its existence. The sand drank deeply of blood as she carved through the gang with ruthless determination. Yet fate is cruel. One old survivor managed to escape her wrath and reached his leader with Furiosa still captive. That leader was Dr. Dementus, a warlord unlike any other, charismatic, theatrical, and profoundly unhinged. He commanded the biker horde not just with fear, but with spectacle, cloaking brutality in twisted charm. He believed himself untouchable, convinced that no power in the wasteland could rival his own. When Furiosa was brought before him, dusty and defiant, he did not see merely a stolen child. He saw mystery. He heard whispers of abundance. A place of green. A place of water. In a world dying of thirst, that word echoed louder than gunfire. Dementus ordered his men to keep her alive and treated well. She would lead him to paradise, whether she intended to or not. That night, beneath the fury of a rising sandstorm, Mary infiltrated the camp and freed her daughter. Wind howled like the ghosts of the dead as they escaped together, riding hard into the blinding chaos. Mary believed the storm would erase their tracks. But Dementus was prepared. He unleashed trained dogs bred to hunt scent across miles of madness. They followed relentlessly. Mary had been wounded during her pursuit, and blood loss slowed her with every passing mile. Eventually she understood the brutal truth. Only one of them would make it back alive. Stopping beneath the swirling sky, she pressed a peach pit into Furiosa's hand, the seed of their home. "Plant this," she told her daughter. "Let it grow." It was not just instruction, it was legacy. Then she ordered Furiosa to ride without looking back. Furiosa obeyed at first, tears cutting through the dust on her face. But when she heard the crack of a gunshot behind her, instinct overpowered obedience. She turned back. She saw her mother captured and beaten before the roaring horde. Dementus made a cruel bargain, reveal the location of the Green Place and Mary would live. Furiosa said nothing, not a word. Loyalty to her home outweighed even the terror of loss. Dementus killed Mary slowly, ensuring the image would sear itself into Furiosa's memory forever. In that instant, something inside the child hardened into unbreakable steel. Grief became fuel. Silence became armor. She would survive. She would remember. And one day, she would return. Twisted by his own unresolved grief, Dementus adopted Furiosa as a symbolic daughter, projecting onto her the family he had lost. But she remained silent and watchful, carving tiny star maps into her skin to memorize the night sky, determined that someday she would navigate her way back home. The Wasteland became both her prison and her training ground. When word spread of another fortress, the Citadel, ruled by Immortan Joe, Dementus saw opportunity. Water flowed from its cliffs. Crops grew in its shadows. Power radiated from its heights. He marched his horde to demand surrender, only to witness Immortan Joe's terrifying display of devotion as warboys hurled themselves to explosive deaths in suicidal worship. Bombs rained from above, and Dementus retreated, humiliated but not defeated. Instead of direct assault, he sought leverage. He discovered the Citadel's reliance on trade with Gastown for fuel. So he ambushed an oil convoy, seized control, and staged a coup in Gastown, claiming its refinery for himself. Chaos rippled across the wasteland. Immortan Joe demanded negotiation. Dementus demanded more water, more food, double the tribute, and threatened to destroy Gastown if anything happened to him. Joe agreed to talk but imposed a condition. He had seen Furiosa. Healthy, unscarred, a rare, full life. He demanded her as part of the bargain. Dementus surrendered her without hesitation. Furiosa was taken to the Citadel, where tyranny flowed alongside water. She was meant to become one of Joe's breeders, imprisoned to bear heirs for a skull-masked god. But the girl stolen from paradise had already begun to transform. She cut her hair. She erased her past. Disguised as a mute warboy, she slipped into the machinery of Joe's regime, disappearing into grease and steel. The child was gone. In her place stood something new, something patient, calculating, and forged by fire. And the wasteland had only just begun to feel her fury. Years passed beneath the shadow of the Citadel's towering cliffs, and the little girl stolen from the green place slowly transformed into someone the wasteland itself had forged. Furiosa erased her past with deliberate precision, shaving her head, smearing her skin with grease, and burying her identity beneath absolute silence. Disguised as a mute warboy, she blended into Immortan Joe's chrome-sprayed army of fanatics, young men conditioned to worship engines and die spectacular deaths in the name of their tyrant. She studied everything, their rituals, their devotion, their weaknesses. While they shouted promises of Valhalla and hurled themselves into explosions, Furiosa remained still and observant. Every engine she repaired, every weapon she assembled, every supply route she memorized became part of a larger plan forming quietly in her mind. The Citadel itself was not merely a fortress carved into rock, it was a living system of power. Water cascaded from its heights in controlled floods, crops grew in tiered gardens carved into stone, and deep within its belly, weapons were forged for endless war. Its survival depended on two vital outposts: Gastown, where gasoline was refined, and the Bullet Farm, where ammunition was mined and manufactured. Connecting these territories was the War Rig, a colossal armored tanker built to cross the wasteland and withstand relentless attacks. Driving it required skill beyond bravado, and that skill belonged to Praetorian Jack. Jack stood apart from the chaos that surrounded him. Hardened by years of loss, disciplined and steady, he commanded respect without theatrics. When Furiosa first saw him guide the War Rig through a storm of sand and fire, she recognized competence free of madness. Quietly, she maneuvered herself into the Citadel's mechanical ranks, volunteering for the most grueling assignments as the War Rig underwent upgrades. Her work was flawless and tireless, drawing the attention of Scrotus, one of Immortan Joe's volatile sons, who unknowingly elevated a rebel within his own ranks. Over time, Furiosa's mechanical genius became undeniable. She reinforced armor plating, improved engine systems, and helped transform the War Rig into a near-indestructible machine. Her hands shaped the beast she would one day command. fate shifted violently when betrayal erupted from the skies. The Octoboss, a former lieutenant of Dementus, had grown disillusioned with his leader's instability and cruelty. Hungry for power, he launched a savage aerial assault on the war rig during a supply run. His mortifiers descended like predators, hurling explosives and tearing through the crew. Fire engulfed steel, screams dissolved into smoke, and in the chaos, Furiosa's hidden motorcycle, the last fragile symbol of her planned escape, was destroyed. Yet both Furiosa and Jack survived the massacre. Fighting side by side amid wreckage and flame, they repelled the attackers with ruthless efficiency. Jack quickly realized that the silent war boy beside him possessed skill and focus unlike any fanatic in Joe's army. When the battle ended, Furiosa attempted to seize control of the war rig and flee into the open desert, but Jack stopped her with seasoned ease. Instead of punishment, he offered partnership. He had seen her potential and sensed her hunger for something beyond survival. He proposed a bargain: help him rebuild his shattered crew, and in return he would teach her everything he knew. It was the first alliance Furiosa chose freely. Under Jack's mentorship, she mastered navigation across shifting dunes, combat strategy against raiders, and the art of leadership. She rose to second in command and earned the title of Praetorian, commanding respect not through fanaticism but through competence. For the first time since losing her mother, she allowed herself a fragile connection. Jack, burdened by his own ghosts, saw in Furiosa a chance at redemption. Quietly, they began to plan an escape, one that might one day carry her back toward the memory of the Green Place. Meanwhile, far beyond the Citadel's walls, Dementus struggled to maintain control of Gastown. His reckless rule led to fuel shortages, riots, and growing unrest. The delicate balance between the Citadel, Gastown, and the Bullet Farm began to fracture. During supply missions, Jack and Furiosa witnessed the instability firsthand. When they attempted to collect fuel from Gastown, desperate citizens attacked them, forcing a retreat. Jack reported the collapse directly to Immortan Joe, who understood immediately that war was inevitable. He ordered Jack and Furiosa to retrieve weapons from the Bullet Farm in preparation for a full assault. But Dementus had already moved. In a calculated coup, he seized control of the Bullet Farm, positioning himself not as a mere raider but as a rival king. When Jack and Furiosa arrived at the facility, they rode straight into an ambush. Bullets sparked against metal corridors as Dementus's forces attacked from within. Jack urged Furiosa to flee, but she refused to abandon him. Together they fought through smoke and chaos, escaping in the war rig with enemy vehicles thundering behind them across the desert. The chase stretched across dunes beneath a dying sun until overwhelming numbers brought them down. Captured and bound, they were dragged before Dementus. Unaware of Furiosa's true identity beneath grease and scars, he chose to make an example of Jack. In an act of calculated cruelty, he chained him to a vehicle and had him dragged across the wasteland until nothing remained but blood and dust. Furiosa was forced to watch the only person who had believed in her since childhood die a brutal death. Grief threatened to crush her, but rage kept her standing. When opportunity came, it demanded a terrible price. With her arm crushed and pinned, she severed it herself to escape, sacrificing flesh, bone, and the star map carved into her skin that once guided her toward home. The pain was unimaginable, but survival required sacrifice. She disappeared into the desert once more, carrying the weight of two ghosts, her mother and Jack, and a fury that no longer burned quietly. Dementus had taken everything from her twice. This time she would not run. This time she would return the favor. Alone in the wasteland once more, bleeding and half-conscious, Furiosa dragged herself across sand that burned like fire beneath the merciless sun. Each movement sent waves of agony through her body. She had lost her arm in a brutal act of self-preservation. She had lost the star map carved into her flesh, the final compass pointing toward the Green Place. She had lost Jack, the only person who had believed in her strength beyond survival. But even stripped of everything, she had not lost her will. The desert tried to swallow her, wind erasing her tracks as if she were already a ghost, yet she kept moving forward. In the distance, a lone rider watched her struggle, one of the Wasteland's silent witnesses who observed but did not interfere. Eventually, through sheer defiance of death, she reached the towering cliffs of the citadel once again. She returned not as a captive child or a hidden infiltrator, but as something far more dangerous, a strategist hardened by loss and sharpened by vengeance. Inside the citadel, Immortan Joe was preparing for full-scale war. Reports of instability in Gastown had convinced him that Dementus's stronghold must be crushed before it grew stronger. War boys chanted in anticipation, engines roared in preparation, and weapons were stockpiled for the coming assault. But Furiosa, now nearly unrecognizable beneath scars and steel resolve, brought intelligence that altered everything. She understood Dementus in ways Joe did not. Dementus thrived on spectacle and deception. Destroying Gastown would only be bait, a dramatic lure to draw the Citadel's forces into open conflict while he consolidated real power elsewhere. The true objective, she warned, was the bullet farm. If Dementus secured both fuel and ammunition, he would control the Wasteland's lifeblood. Joe listened, not out of trust, but because Furiosa's logic was undeniable. Working alongside the calculating people-eater, Joe's cold and methodical advisor, Furiosa helped design a counter-strategy built on misdirection. They would let Dementus believe his deception had succeeded. The war boys would appear to march toward Gastown in full force, engines thundering visibly across the desert, sending up plumes of dust for miles. Scouts would carry false signals. Spies would whisper predictable plans. Meanwhile, the true defense would fortify the citadel itself, preparing for Dementus to strike where he believed Joe weakest. It was a gamble of psychology rather than brute force, and Furiosa understood that arrogance would be Dementus's undoing. The plan unfolded with ruthless precision. Dementus, convinced he had outmaneuvered Immortan Joe, mobilized his biker horde toward what he assumed was vulnerability. He expected chaos, panic, and overextension. Instead, he rode directly into annihilation. The war boys descended from fortified positions with fanatical fury, chrome-painted faces gleaming beneath the sun as engines roared and explosives detonated in synchronized devastation. The desert erupted into smoke and fire as the horde was overwhelmed by disciplined brutality. What had once been a roaming army of terror was crushed beneath coordinated might. Chaos consumed the battlefield, and for a brief moment, it seemed as though balance had been restored. But Furiosa did not celebrate. Victory against the horde did not erase her ghosts. It did not restore her mother. It did not bring Jack back from the blood-soaked sand. And with her star map carved away along with her arm, she faced a devastating truth. The green place was no longer reachable. Whether it still flourished or had already fallen to time and drought, she had no way of finding it. The path home existed only in memory. Accepting that loss did not weaken her, it transformed her. She shaved her head clean once more, shedding any remnants of the girl who once dreamed of returning. In the Citadel's mechanical depths, she forged a prosthetic arm from scrap metal and salvaged components. With meticulous precision, she crafted a limb that was not merely functional but symbolic. It was steel where flesh had failed. It was control where fate had once dictated suffering. It was a declaration that she would shape her own destiny from this point forward. When word reached the citadel that Dementus had survived the massacre and fled into the open desert, Furiosa did not wait for orders. She mounted pursuit alone. Across endless dunes beneath a sky bleeding red at the horizon, predator and prey raced once more. The chase stretched for miles, engines howling against the wind. Dementus, stripped of much of his power and followers, drove with desperation rather than arrogance. Yet he still believed he could outrun consequence. In the vast emptiness where the world felt truly lifeless, Furiosa finally cornered him. The theatrics that once defined him were gone. What remained was a man diminished by failure and haunted by his own collapse. He did not recognize her. Not as the child he had stolen. Not as the Praetorian who had defied him. But she recognized him completely. Every scar on his face echoed with memory. Every shift of his voice carried the weight of her mother's final moments. Yet when she subdued him, she did so not with uncontrolled rage, but with calculated precision. Rage would have given him a quick death. Precision allowed her something far more enduring. Dementus expected execution in the sand. Instead, Furiosa brought him back to the citadel alive. There, in a decision both poetic and merciless, she imprisoned him and used his living body as fertilizer, planting her mother's peach pit in soil nourished by the man who had destroyed her childhood. It was vengeance transformed into creation. From suffering would grow life. From death would grow remembrance. Over time, the peach tree blossomed against the stone walls of tyranny, a quiet rebellion rooted in memory. Immortan Joe, recognizing both her strategic brilliance and relentless resolve, elevated Furiosa to the rank of Imperator. He granted her command of a new war rig, acknowledging that she was no longer a pawn or survivor but a leader forged through fire. Power shifted not because of bloodline or privilege, but because she had endured what others could not. Yet beneath the citadel's vaults, another chapter waited to unfold. Joe's 5 breeder wives, imprisoned for their ability to produce healthy heirs, lived in controlled isolation much like Furiosa once had. When she visited them, she did not come as a jailer. She brought a peach from the tree grown of vengeance and memory, offering not fruit alone but possibility. It was a symbol that even within oppression, seeds of change could take root. On the eve of another supply run, as engines cooled and the citadel drifted into uneasy silence, the 5 wives made their choice. They hid within Furiosa's war rig, seeking escape from captivity. And Furiosa, Imperator of the Citadel, stood at the edge of a new beginning. She had lost her home, her mother, her arm, her mentor, and her innocence. But in their place, she had gained something unbreakable: purpose. The Wasteland believed it had shattered her spirit. Instead, it had reforged it into steel. Soon the road would roar again, not for survival or vengeance alone, but for freedom. The saga of Furiosa was never merely about loss. It was about transformation. It was the story of a warrior who turned ash into resolve, grief into strategy, and suffering into strength. And as engines prepared to thunder once more across the horizon, one truth remained certain: the storm was coming. Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, follows a long-form narrative structure that feels closer to a mythic epic than a traditional action movie. Unlike Mad Max: Fury Road, which unfolds almost in real time as one extended chase, this film is divided into clear chapters that span many years. The story is structured to show transformation, not just survival. It traces the emotional and physical evolution of Furiosa from an innocent child into a hardened warrior shaped by trauma and loss. The opening act serves as the foundation. It introduces the green place of many mothers, a rare symbol of hope in a dying world. This peaceful beginning is important because it establishes what Furiosa loses. The kidnapping by Dementus acts as the inciting incident. Her mother's execution becomes the emotional trigger that drives the entire narrative forward. This early trauma is not rushed. The film allows the audience to fully feel the weight of that moment, which anchors everything that follows. The second major movement of the plot focuses on captivity and survival. After Furiosa is traded to Immortan Joe, the pacing slows slightly. This section emphasizes world building and character positioning. The Citadel is shown as a complex power structure, not just a fortress. Furiosa's decision to disguise herself and stay silent creates tension built on concealment. Instead of explosive action, this part relies on suspense. The audience knows she is hiding her identity, and that knowledge builds quiet anxiety in every scene. As the timeline jumps forward and Furiosa grows older, the narrative shifts into a training and alliance phase. Her relationship with Praetorian Jack marks a turning point. Structurally, this section operates like a mentor arc in classic storytelling. Jack teaches her skills, but he also teaches her trust. Their convoy missions across the Wasteland introduce large-scale action sequences that feel like contained chapters within the larger saga. Each mission escalates the stakes while reinforcing Furiosa's increasing competence. Midway through the film, the story widens again. Dementus and Immortan Joe are positioned as rival forces struggling for dominance. This political tension adds a layer of strategic conflict. The narrative no longer revolves only around Furiosa's survival. It becomes about territory, power, and shifting alliances. These external conflicts mirror Furiosa's internal struggle between patience and vengeance. The structure carefully balances personal motivation with large-scale war. The central climax occurs during the failed escape attempt with Praetorian Jack. This sequence is designed as a major turning point. It combines emotional stakes with explosive action. The desert battle is chaotic, loud, and relentless. However, the heart of the scene lies in Jack's execution. Structurally, this mirrors the earlier death of Furiosa's mother. The repetition is intentional. It reinforces the cycle of trauma while marking the final stage of her transformation. After this moment, she is no longer driven only by hope of returning home. She is fueled by calculated revenge. The final act narrows its focus again. After the large-scale battles and political struggles, the story becomes intimate. Furiosa's pursuit of Dementus is personal. The pacing tightens. Scenes are shorter, dialogue is sharper, and tension builds toward their confrontation. The showdown functions as emotional closure rather than spectacle. While there is violence, the emphasis is on justice and consequence. Throughout the film, the pacing alternates between extended action sequences and quieter character-driven passages. This rhythm prevents exhaustion and allows the audience to process events. Unlike Fury Road's non-stop momentum, this movie breathes between explosions. That breathing space strengthens the emotional core. The chapter-based structure also reinforces the idea of a saga. Each phase of Furiosa's life feels distinct but connected. Childhood innocence, forced captivity, skill development, loss, and revenge all form clear narrative steps. The time jumps are deliberate, showing growth without unnecessary filler. By the end, the story connects directly to the beginning of Fury Road. The structure completes a circle. What began with a stolen child ends with a powerful imperator. The narrative flow transforms tragedy into strength, carefully layering action, emotion, and myth into one cohesive journey. Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, is built around transformation. More than explosions or war machines, the true engine of the story is character growth. Every major figure in the film changes in meaningful ways, but the most powerful arc belongs to Furiosa herself. Her journey moves from innocence to trauma, from silence to strength, and from survival to calculated power. At the beginning, young Furiosa is curious, hopeful, and deeply connected to the Green Place. She represents purity in a broken world. Her early scenes show a child who believes in community and balance. That innocence is violently stripped away when Dementus kidnaps her and executes her mother. This moment shatters her childhood. From a storytelling perspective, this trauma is not just backstory. It becomes the foundation of her identity. As a captive, Furiosa does not transform immediately into a warrior. Instead, her arc shifts into one of quiet endurance. She learns to observe. She studies the people around her. She understands that survival requires patience. When she arrives at the Citadel under Immortan Joe's rule, her development becomes more internal. She disguises herself and chooses silence as protection. This stage of her life shows intelligence rather than aggression. Her power begins as self-control. When Anya Taylor-Joy takes over the role in the later timeline, Furiosa's physical presence changes, but her emotional core remains consistent. She is guarded, watchful, and focused. Her bond with Praetorian Jack marks the next important phase of her arc. Through Jack, she learns trust again. He does not treat her as property or weakness. He trains her as an equal. This mentorship shapes her confidence. She gains mechanical skill, combat experience, and strategic thinking. Jack's influence adds depth to her personality. For a brief period, Furiosa experiences partnership instead of isolation. Her dream of returning to the Green Place feels possible again. However, when Jack is executed by Dementus, her arc hardens. This second major loss mirrors the first. But this time, she does not break in the same way. Instead of reacting with uncontrolled emotion, she absorbs the pain. Her grief transforms into long-term determination. The loss of her arm during the violent conflict is symbolic as well as physical. It marks the point where she fully becomes the warrior seen in Fury Road. Rather than letting the injury define her as damaged, she adapts. She replaces what was taken with mechanical strength. This reflects the larger theme of survival in the Wasteland. Adaptation is power. By the final act, Furiosa is no longer simply seeking escape. She is actively shaping events. Her rise within Immortan Joe's ranks shows strategic patience. She understands how systems work and how to move within them. Her revenge against Dementus is not rushed. She waits until she can control the outcome. This patience separates her from the chaotic aggression of the men around her. Dementus, played by Chris Hemsworth, also undergoes development. At first, he appears charismatic and theatrical. He enjoys power and spectacle. His leadership style is driven by ego and performance. However, as the story progresses, cracks begin to show. His ambition overreaches. His confidence turns into desperation. By the time Furiosa confronts him, he is no longer a towering force. He is exposed as unstable and fragile. His arc represents the collapse of unchecked ambition. Praetorian Jack's arc, though shorter, is significant. He begins as a loyal commander within Immortan Joe's empire. Over time, his bond with Furiosa shifts his perspective. He becomes willing to risk his position for something greater than obedience. His death is tragic, but it completes his transformation from soldier to ally. Even Immortan Joe functions as a stable force in contrast to Dementus. He does not change drastically, but his consistent tyranny reinforces the harsh reality Furiosa must navigate. Ultimately, the strongest character arc belongs to Furiosa. She evolves from victim to survivor, from survivor to warrior, and from warrior to leader. Her development is layered, emotional, and earned through loss. The film does not present strength as natural talent. It shows strength as something forged through suffering, patience, and resilience in a world that never offers mercy. Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, depends heavily on performance because much of the storytelling is visual rather than dialogue-driven. In a world filled with roaring engines and endless desert landscapes, the actors must communicate emotion through physicality, facial expression, and silence. The cast rises to this challenge, delivering performances that feel intense, grounded, and emotionally layered. Anya Taylor-Joy carries the film in the title role. Taking over a character made famous by Charlize Theron was not an easy task, but Taylor-Joy approaches Furiosa with a different yet equally compelling energy. Her performance is built on restraint. She does not rely on loud emotional displays. Instead, she communicates through stillness and focus. Her eyes often reveal more than her words. In scenes of grief or rage, she tightens her expression rather than breaking down. This controlled acting style matches the harsh world of the Wasteland, where vulnerability can mean death. Physically, Taylor-Joy commits completely to the role. She handles heavy weapons, drives massive vehicles, and participates in intense combat sequences. Her body language evolves as the story progresses. Early in the film, her movements are cautious and observant. As she gains experience, she moves with purpose and authority. By the final act, her posture and gaze reflect command rather than fear. This gradual physical transformation strengthens the credibility of her character arc. Chris Hemsworth delivers one of the most surprising performances of his career as Dementus. Known for heroic roles, Hemsworth fully embraces a chaotic and theatrical villain. His portrayal blends charm, cruelty, and instability. He speaks with dramatic flair, often treating violent situations like performances. However, beneath the spectacle, Hemsworth adds layers of insecurity. As Dementus loses control over his empire, subtle shifts in tone reveal desperation. His laughter becomes strained. His confidence cracks. This complexity prevents the character from feeling one-dimensional. Hemsworth's physical transformation also enhances his performance. Hidden under heavy prosthetics and elaborate costumes, he moves differently than in his previous roles. His gestures are exaggerated, almost playful at times, which contrasts sharply with Furiosa's controlled presence. This contrast makes their eventual confrontation feel inevitable and deeply personal. Tom Burke, as Praetorian Jack, brings quiet strength to the film. His performance is understated but essential. Jack is not flashy or overly dramatic. Instead, Burke portrays him as steady, skilled, and thoughtful. His calm demeanor creates a strong counterbalance to the chaotic forces around him. In scenes with Taylor-Joy, their chemistry feels natural and built on mutual respect. Burke avoids melodrama during emotional moments, which makes his eventual fate even more heartbreaking. The young Furiosa, played in early scenes by a child actor, delivers a powerful foundation for the character. Her expressions of fear and defiance feel authentic. The transition from child to adult Furiosa works because both performances share emotional continuity. The pain in the young girl's eyes carries forward into Taylor-Joy's portrayal. Latchy Hume steps into the role of Immortan Joe, maintaining the intimidating presence established in Fury Road. While his screen time is limited compared to Dementus, Hume captures the cold authority of the character. His voice, posture, and stillness communicate control. He does not need dramatic speeches to dominate a scene. His power feels institutional rather than emotional. Supporting actors who portray members of the war parties and Wasteland factions also contribute strongly. Even minor characters feel committed to the extreme tone of the world. Their physical performances, whether riding motorcycles or engaging in combat, add authenticity to the setting. Overall, the acting in Furiosa balances intensity with restraint. No performance feels exaggerated beyond the tone of the universe. The cast understands that this world is brutal and stylized, yet emotionally real. Through subtle facial work, physical commitment, and layered characterization, the actors elevate the film beyond spectacle and anchor it in human emotion. Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, is a clear reflection of George Miller's bold and uncompromising vision as a filmmaker. After decades of shaping the Mad Max universe, Miller returns not simply to repeat what worked before, but to expand the mythology in a deeper and more emotionally driven way. His direction shows confidence, patience, and a willingness to take creative risks within a large action franchise. One of the most noticeable elements of Miller's direction is his decision to structure the film as a long-term saga rather than a non-stop chase. In Fury Road, the story unfolded almost entirely in real time, driven by constant movement. In Furiosa, Miller slows down the pacing to allow character development and emotional weight to take center stage. This shift proves that he sees the franchise as more than action spectacle. He treats it as modern mythology. Miller's vision emphasizes transformation. Every stage of Furiosa's life is presented as a chapter in a larger legend. He carefully balances intimate character moments with explosive large-scale sequences. This balance reflects a director who understands rhythm. He knows when to let a scene breathe and when to overwhelm the audience with speed and chaos. The quieter scenes are not filler. They are deliberate pauses that make the action feel earned rather than repetitive. Visually, Miller maintains the harsh beauty of the Wasteland while adding new layers to its world. His direction ensures that every location feels purposeful. The green place at the beginning feels alive and hopeful, which makes its loss emotionally devastating. The Citadel feels mechanical and oppressive. Gas Town and other territories expand the sense of a larger political ecosystem. Miller's world building is detailed but never over-explained. He trusts the audience to observe and understand through context. Another strength of Miller's direction is his commitment to practical action. While modern blockbusters often rely heavily on digital effects, Miller continues to prioritize real vehicles, physical stunts, and tangible environments. This choice gives the action sequences weight and texture. The camera often remains close to the vehicles, capturing the grit and danger. The result feels immediate and grounded, even in a stylized universe. Miller also demonstrates strong control over tone. The Mad Max world has always blended brutality with moments of strange humor. In Furiosa, he refines this balance. Dementus, played by Chris Hemsworth, is allowed to be theatrical and unpredictable, but the film never turns into parody. Miller keeps the emotional core intact. Even during the most outrageous action scenes, the story remains centered on Furiosa's pain and determination. The director's handling of violence is another important aspect of his vision. The film contains intense and sometimes disturbing imagery, but it never feels meaningless. Violence has consequence. Each major death shapes Furiosa's emotional state and pushes the narrative forward. Miller does not glorify suffering. Instead, he presents it as the harsh reality of a broken world. Miller's experience as both writer and director strengthens the coherence of the film. Because he helped craft the screenplay, his direction aligns closely with the story's themes. The visual storytelling, editing rhythm, and character arcs all feel connected to a unified creative intention. There is no sense of conflicting ideas. The film feels guided by a single strong voice. Perhaps most importantly, Miller respects the audience. He avoids unnecessary exposition and trusts viewers to follow time jumps and political shifts. He allows silence to carry meaning. He lets facial expressions replace dialogue. This confidence in visual storytelling separates his direction from many modern action films. Overall, George Miller's direction in Furiosa demonstrates ambition and discipline. He expands the franchise's scale while deepening its emotional impact. His vision transforms a prequel into a mythic origin story that feels both epic and personal, proving that even in a world of engines and sand, human storytelling remains the true driving force. Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, continues the bold visual tradition of the Mad Max universe while also refining it in subtle ways. The cinematography plays a crucial role in shaping how the audience experiences the Wasteland. Every frame is designed to feel intense, immersive, and emotionally connected to Furiosa's journey. The film does not rely only on large explosions or fast vehicles. Instead, it uses composition, color, movement, and scale to create meaning. The desert landscapes remain a central visual element. Wide shots of endless sand emphasize isolation and vulnerability. The horizon often stretches far into the distance, making characters look small against the environment. This visual choice reinforces one of the film's main themes: survival in a world that does not care about individual lives. The Wasteland feels vast and unforgiving, and the camera frequently pulls back to remind the audience of that reality. At the same time, the cinematography also focuses closely on faces. Tight close-ups of Furiosa allow viewers to read subtle emotional shifts. In many scenes, dialogue is minimal, so expression becomes the primary storytelling tool. The camera lingers on her eyes during moments of grief, anger, or calculation. These close shots create intimacy in contrast to the large-scale action happening around her. Color grading plays an important role in distinguishing locations. The green place at the beginning is shot with warmer, natural tones. Greens and soft light create a sense of life and balance. Once Furiosa is taken into the Wasteland, the palette shifts dramatically. Harsh oranges, dusty yellows, and metallic grays dominate the screen. This shift visually marks the loss of innocence. The Citadel has a cold, industrial look, filled with sharp shadows and rigid structures. Gastown and other territories carry their own distinct visual signatures, helping the audience understand geography without heavy exposition. Camera movement is another defining feature. During action sequences, the camera often stays mounted close to vehicles. Instead of chaotic shaking, the movement feels controlled and deliberate. This technique allows viewers to clearly follow the action. Explosions, crashes, and fights are framed in a way that maintains spatial awareness. The audience knows where each vehicle is positioned, which makes the danger feel real rather than confusing. The film also uses slow motion selectively. Instead of overusing it, key moments are emphasized through brief slow motion shots. These usually highlight emotional turning points rather than just spectacle. For example, moments of loss or confrontation are given visual weight through slight pacing changes. This technique enhances impact without breaking immersion. Lighting design supports the storytelling as well. Daytime scenes in the open desert are bright and unforgiving, symbolizing exposure and risk. Night scenes often rely on firelight, headlights, or limited artificial sources. These create dramatic contrasts between darkness and flame. The glow of engines and burning fuel becomes part of the visual identity of the world. The production design works hand in hand with the cinematography. Vehicles are filmed almost like characters. Each war rig, motorcycle, and armored machine has distinct features. The camera highlights mechanical details, from spinning wheels to vibrating engines. This attention to detail adds texture and authenticity. Another visual strength is scale. Massive convoys stretch across the sand, filling the frame with motion. Crowds of warboys and bikers create layers of activity within a single shot. The cinematography ensures that even during chaos, composition remains balanced. The eye is guided naturally from foreground to background. Overall, the cinematography of Furiosa combines epic scale with emotional focus. It captures both the brutality of the wasteland and the inner strength of its central character. Through controlled camera work, purposeful color design, and thoughtful framing, the film transforms a desert landscape into a powerful visual narrative that supports every stage of Furiosa's evolution. Editing plays a critical role in shaping the experience of Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. Unlike many modern action films that rely on extremely fast cuts and chaotic movement, this film demonstrates a controlled and purposeful editing style. The pacing reflects the long-term storytelling structure, allowing the audience to follow emotional development while still delivering intense action sequences. The editing choices support clarity, rhythm, and character focus rather than overwhelming spectacle. One of the most important aspects of the film's pacing is its chapter-like structure. The story spans many years, and the editing clearly marks transitions between stages of Furiosa's life. Time jumps are handled smoothly, often using visual cues rather than heavy exposition. For example, shifts in environment, costume, and physical maturity signal progression. The editing trusts the audience to understand these transitions without excessive explanation. The opening act moves at a deliberate pace. Scenes in the green place are allowed to breathe. The slower rhythm establishes emotional attachment before chaos interrupts. When Dementus invades and kidnaps Furiosa, the editing sharpens. Cuts become quicker, and tension builds through cross-cutting between characters. This shift in pace mirrors the sudden destruction of innocence. As Furiosa enters captivity and later the Citadel, the editing becomes more restrained again. Sequences focus on observation and survival. Shots linger slightly longer, creating suspense through stillness. Silence is often preserved rather than filled with constant movement. This measured rhythm emphasizes the character's internal struggle. Instead of rushing through these quieter moments, the film allows tension to build slowly. Action sequences are edited with remarkable clarity. During large desert battles, multiple vehicles, explosions, and fighters occupy the frame. However, the editing maintains spatial awareness. Each cut logically follows movement from one vehicle to another. The audience understands where characters are positioned in relation to each other. This clarity enhances excitement because viewers can track cause and effect. When a vehicle crashes or explodes, the buildup is visible. The pacing during convoy missions balances momentum and impact. Rapid cuts are used during collisions or gunfire, but they are intercut with wider shots that re-establish geography. This pattern prevents confusion. The rhythm feels intense but controlled. Instead of relying solely on speed, the film uses variation. Fast sequences are followed by brief pauses that allow the audience to process what just happened. Emotional moments are given space through longer takes. When major losses occur, the editing slows noticeably. Reactions are not rushed. The camera remains on faces, allowing expressions to carry weight. These pauses are crucial. Without them, the story would feel hollow. By contrast, the decision to hold on silence after tragedy deepens emotional impact. The climax demonstrates tight, focused pacing. As Furiosa moves closer to confronting Dementus, scenes become shorter and more direct. Dialogue exchanges are concise. The editing reduces distractions and centers attention on their inevitable meeting. The build-up feels steady rather than sudden. This deliberate progression makes the final confrontation feel earned. Another strength of the editing is its balance between spectacle and narrative continuity. Despite spanning many years, the film never feels disjointed. Each chapter flows into the next through thematic connections. Trauma leads to training. Training leads to alliance. Alliance leads to loss. Loss leads to revenge. The editing reinforces this chain of cause and effect. Overall, the pacing of Furiosa reflects maturity in storytelling. It avoids constant adrenaline and instead builds waves of intensity. Quiet scenes support explosive ones, and emotional beats are not sacrificed for speed. The editing shapes the film into a cohesive saga, ensuring that every action sequence and every pause contributes to Furiosa's long and powerful transformation. Sound design is one of the most powerful tools in Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. In a world built on engines, explosions, wind, and metal, sound is not just background support. It becomes part of the storytelling language. The film uses audio to create tension, scale, and emotional depth. From the quiet moments of isolation to the overwhelming roar of convoy battles, every sound feels intentional and carefully layered. The Wasteland itself has a distinct sonic identity. Wind constantly moves across open desert spaces, sometimes soft and haunting, sometimes harsh and aggressive. This natural sound reinforces the emptiness of the world. In wide landscape shots, the subtle presence of wind emphasizes loneliness. It reminds the audience that survival happens in an environment that never truly rests. Engines are perhaps the most defining sound element of the film. Each vehicle has its own unique mechanical tone. War rigs growl heavily and deeply, suggesting strength and weight. Motorcycles sound sharp and aggressive, matching the reckless nature of Dementus's biker army. These differences are not random. They help viewers identify factions even before seeing them clearly on screen. The sound design makes machines feel alive, almost like characters. Explosions and crashes are designed with strong impact but without distortion. Instead of blending into one loud blur, each blast has texture. Metal bends, tires screech, chains rattle, and debris scatters. This layered approach keeps action sequences immersive. The audience does not just see destruction. They hear every element of it. Silence is also used strategically. During emotionally heavy scenes, especially moments of loss, the film reduces background noise. The absence of sound becomes powerful. When Furiosa experiences trauma, the audio often narrows to her breathing or faint environmental noise. This technique places the audience inside her perspective. It creates intimacy even within a large-scale production. The musical score supports the emotional arc without overwhelming it. The composer builds on the aggressive, percussion-driven style associated with the Mad Max franchise but introduces more dramatic themes tied to Furiosa's personal journey. Heavy drums and deep strings dominate action sequences, driving momentum forward. The rhythm of the music often matches the movement of vehicles, creating a sense of propulsion. However, the score also includes quieter, more haunting melodies. These softer themes appear during reflective moments. They carry a sense of longing and memory, especially when the green place is referenced. The contrast between harsh percussion and restrained melody mirrors Furiosa's internal conflict between rage and hope. One of the strongest elements of the music is its restraint. It does not play constantly. Many scenes rely purely on environmental sound. When the score does enter, it feels purposeful. For example, during major turning points, the music gradually builds rather than suddenly exploding. This gradual layering increases tension naturally. During large battles, music and sound design blend seamlessly. Instead of competing, they support each other. Percussion often aligns with engine revs and impacts. The result is rhythmic chaos that feels coordinated rather than random. This careful synchronization enhances immersion. Voice design also deserves attention. Characters speak in different tones that reflect their status and personality. Immortan Joe's voice is commanding and steady. Dementus speaks with theatrical flair, shifting between humor and threat. Furiosa, particularly in her adult form, speaks sparingly. Her quiet voice carries weight because it contrasts with the loud world around her. Overall, the sound design and score elevate the film beyond visual spectacle. They deepen emotion, clarify action, and build atmosphere. The roar of engines, the howl of wind, and the pulse of drums combine to create a powerful sensory experience. In Furiosa, sound is not just heard. It is felt, shaping the audience's connection to every moment of survival and transformation. Production design is one of the strongest pillars of Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. The film's world feels tangible, detailed, and lived in. Every vehicle, costume, fortress, and desert settlement reflects years of decay, survival, and adaptation. The design does not simply create a backdrop for action. It builds a believable ecosystem where power, scarcity, and culture are visible in physical form. The green place of many mothers stands in sharp contrast to the rest of the wasteland. It is lush, natural, and filled with plant life. Soft earth tones, greenery, and water define its visual identity. The set design here emphasizes harmony and balance. Structures feel organic rather than mechanical. This environment is important because it visually establishes what Furiosa loses. The peaceful design strengthens the emotional impact of her kidnapping. Once the story shifts to the wasteland, the production design becomes harsher and more industrial. The citadel, ruled by Immortan Joe, is massive and intimidating. Built high into rock formations, it feels both ancient and mechanical. Rusted metal platforms, towering elevators, and water release systems dominate its structure. The design communicates hierarchy clearly. The ruling class occupies elevated spaces, while workers and prisoners remain below. The physical layout reinforces social control without needing heavy explanation. Gastown introduces another distinct location. Its design is centered around fuel production. Pipes, tanks, smokestacks, and fire bursts define the environment. The air looks polluted and thick. The architecture feels unstable and chaotic, matching the greed-driven culture of the settlement. In contrast, the bullet farm is designed with a militaristic identity. Weapons, ammunition stockpiles, and rigid organization dominate its look. Each location visually represents its primary resource. Vehicles remain one of the most iconic aspects of the franchise's design. In Furiosa, every machine feels handcrafted and customized. War rigs are layered with armor, spikes, and reinforced metal panels. Motorcycles used by Dementus' gang are lighter but aggressive in shape. These designs reflect personality. Dementus' vehicles appear chaotic and decorative, while Immortan Joe's fleet looks organized and heavy. The attention to detail is visible even in small elements. Costumes are made from scavenged materials. Leather, rusted metal, worn fabric, and repurposed mechanical parts form clothing that feels practical. Furiosa's evolving costume reflects her journey. As she grows stronger, her outfit becomes more functional and armored. Her mechanical arm later becomes a defining design feature, blending human vulnerability with industrial strength. Sets are constructed with depth, allowing actors to move naturally within the environment. Platforms, ladders, and open desert spaces create dynamic staging opportunities. During action sequences, these practical sets enhance realism. Explosions interact with physical structures, and vehicles crash into actual obstacles. This practical approach gives weight to destruction. The desert locations themselves play a major role. Filming in vast open landscapes provides authenticity that digital environments often lack. The sand, dust, and sunlight are real elements affecting performance and camera work. The environment becomes part of the production design. The emptiness of the land contrasts with the crowded mechanical chaos of convoys and settlements. Color choices also reinforce design themes. Rust orange, faded red, and metallic gray dominate most wasteland settings. These colors suggest heat, corrosion, and exhaustion. In contrast, the green place features more natural greens and browns, symbolizing life. Overall, the production design of Furiosa does more than create spectacle. It communicates social structure, character identity, and emotional tone. Every set and location feels purposeful. The world appears both mythic and believable. Through detailed craftsmanship and consistent visual language, the film builds an immersive wasteland that supports every stage of Furiosa's transformation from captive child to powerful imperator. Furiosa, A Mad Max Saga continues the franchise tradition of blending practical effects with carefully controlled visual effects. One of the defining qualities of George Miller's filmmaking style is his commitment to physical action. Rather than relying entirely on computer-generated imagery, the film builds real vehicles, stages real stunts, and uses real desert environments whenever possible. This approach gives the action weight and authenticity that is immediately noticeable on screen. Practical effects dominate the large convoy sequences. Massive war rigs, armored trucks, and customized motorcycles were constructed in real life for filming. These vehicles were not just props sitting still. They were fully functional machines designed to drive at high speeds across harsh terrain. When they collide, flip, or explode, much of what the audience sees is physically happening. This realism creates a sense of danger that digital effects alone rarely achieve. Stunt work plays a major role in the film's visual identity. Performers hang from poles, leap between moving vehicles, and engage in close combat on unstable surfaces. Many of these stunts were executed practically with safety rigs later removed digitally. This combination allows actors and stunt teams to interact with real objects while still maintaining safety. The result feels immersive and intense. Explosions are another area where practical effects shine. Controlled detonations were staged on location, producing real fire, smoke, and debris. When vehicles are engulfed in flames, the fire interacts naturally with the environment. Light reflects off metal surfaces, and dust mixes with smoke. These natural reactions add texture that is difficult to replicate digitally. However, the film does use visual effects strategically. Digital enhancements extend landscapes, increase the size of convoys, and remove safety equipment. In wide shots, CGI is used to expand settlements like the Citadel or Gastown, making them appear larger and more complex. These additions are subtle and integrated carefully. The goal is not to replace reality but to enhance it. One of the most effective uses of visual effects involves environmental control. The desert is unpredictable, so digital tools help adjust skies, sandstorms, and lighting consistency. For example, certain action sequences may combine practical vehicle movement with digitally enhanced dust clouds. This blending creates dramatic visuals while preserving the grounded feeling of real motion. Character-related effects are handled with similar balance. Furiosa's mechanical arm is a key example. The base prosthetic is practical, allowing the actor to interact physically with objects. Digital adjustments refine its appearance and movement in complex scenes. This layered approach ensures that the arm feels both functional and believable. Chris Hemsworth's transformation into Dementus also involves a mix of practical and digital effects. Prosthetics and costume design create his exaggerated physical look. Visual effects are used to refine certain details, ensuring seamless integration during action scenes. The goal is to maintain the tactile presence of makeup while enhancing durability under extreme conditions. Large-scale battles benefit from digital crowd extensions. While many performers were physically present, visual effects multiply armies to emphasize scale. This technique makes conflicts feel epic without sacrificing clarity. The editing and camera work support these effects by maintaining spatial orientation. Importantly, the film avoids the glossy artificial look common in some modern blockbusters. Even when digital effects are used, color grading and texture remain consistent with the gritty tone of the franchise. The sand, rust, and metal always look worn and imperfect. Overall, Furiosa succeeds because it prioritizes practical filmmaking while using visual effects as support rather than replacement. The blend creates action that feels dangerous and immediate. By respecting physical reality and enhancing it carefully, the film delivers spectacle without losing authenticity. The screenplay of Furiosa, A Mad Max Saga reflects George Miller's signature storytelling style, which relies heavily on visual narrative rather than constant dialogue. The script, co-written by Miller and Nico Lathouris, is structured with long stretches of action and silence, allowing behavior and environment to communicate meaning. This approach makes every spoken line feel deliberate and purposeful. One of the defining traits of the dialogue is restraint. Furiosa herself speaks very little, especially in the early and middle portions of the film. As a child, her silence is forced by trauma and fear. As an adult, her silence becomes strategic. She listens more than she speaks. When she finally delivers important lines, they carry weight because the audience understands how much she has endured. The screenplay respects this quiet strength. It never forces her into unnecessary speeches. Dementus, played by Chris Hemsworth, provides a sharp contrast. His dialogue is theatrical, dramatic, and sometimes darkly humorous. He enjoys speaking and often treats conversations like performances. His exaggerated tone reveals his ego and instability. The script uses his words to show how he sees himself as a ruler and entertainer. However, as his power weakens, his dialogue subtly shifts. Confidence gives way to frustration, and his speeches become more defensive. This evolution is carefully written. Praetorian Jack's dialogue is calm and direct. He does not waste words. His lines focus on instruction, survival, and loyalty. Through short conversations with Furiosa, the screenplay builds their bond. They rarely express emotion openly, but small exchanges reveal mutual respect. This understated writing style strengthens their relationship because it feels realistic in a harsh environment where vulnerability can be dangerous. Immortan Joe's dialogue remains authoritative and symbolic. His speech patterns emphasize control and order. He often speaks in declarations rather than conversations. The screenplay maintains continuity with his portrayal in Fury Road, ensuring that his presence feels consistent within the larger franchise. World building is handled through organic dialogue rather than heavy exposition. Characters reference resources, territories, and factions naturally during conversations. For example, mentions of Gas Town or the Bullet Farm occur within strategic discussions. The audience learns about the political landscape without being directly lectured. This technique keeps the pacing steady while expanding the universe. The screenplay also uses repetition effectively. Certain phrases about survival, power, and destiny echo throughout the story. These repeated ideas reinforce central themes. Furiosa's memories of the Green Place function as emotional anchors. Even when not directly mentioned, the concept of home influences her decisions. The writing ensures that her motivation remains clear without constant reminders. Humor appears in brief moments, mostly through Dementus or secondary characters. The humor is dark and often unsettling. It does not break the tone but instead highlights the absurdity of life in the Wasteland. These small moments provide contrast to the intensity of action scenes. Structurally, the screenplay follows a chapter-based format. Each phase of Furiosa's life feels like a distinct segment with its own conflict and resolution. This episodic design supports the saga concept. Transitions between chapters are smooth because the writing connects them through cause and effect. Trauma leads to strategy. Strategy leads to alliance. Alliance leads to loss. Loss leads to revenge. Importantly, the script avoids over-explaining emotions. Characters rarely state exactly how they feel. Instead, the screenplay trusts actors and visuals to convey meaning. This restraint gives the film maturity and depth. Overall, the dialogue and screenplay of Furiosa are disciplined and focused. Words are used carefully. Silence often speaks louder than conversation. Through sharp contrasts in speaking styles and efficient world building, the script supports both character development and mythic scale. Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, operates primarily within the post-apocalyptic action genre, but it does not limit itself to pure spectacle. The film blends action, drama, revenge thriller, and mythic epic elements into one cohesive narrative. This layered approach allows it to feel larger and more emotionally complex than a standard action movie. George Miller carefully manages tone shifts throughout the film, ensuring that changes in mood support the story rather than disrupt it. At its core, the film delivers high-intensity action. Massive vehicle chases, explosive battles, and brutal combat sequences remain central to the Mad Max identity. Engines roar, metal crashes, and the desert becomes a battlefield. These sequences satisfy expectations of the genre. However, unlike a non-stop adrenaline experience, The action here is spaced between quieter dramatic segments. This balance keeps the audience emotionally engaged instead of overwhelmed. The opening section carries a tone closer to survival drama. The peaceful life in the green place establishes a sense of hope and stability. When Dementus invades, the tone shifts sharply into tragedy. The execution of Furiosa's mother introduces emotional darkness. This early transition signals that the film is not simply about adventure. It is about loss and transformation. As Furiosa enters captivity and later the Citadel, the tone becomes tense and suspenseful. These scenes resemble a psychological survival thriller. She must hide her identity, observe carefully, and plan strategically. The pacing slows, and the danger feels constant but restrained. Instead of explosive violence, tension builds through silence and uncertainty. This tonal shift deepens the story and expands the genre beyond action. The introduction of Praetorian Jack adds a subtle emotional layer. Their partnership introduces elements of mentorship and quiet trust. For a brief period, the tone softens slightly. There is still danger, but there is also the possibility of connection. These moments prevent the film from becoming emotionally one-dimensional. They remind the audience that even in a harsh world, relationships matter. When large-scale battles erupt between Dementus and Immortan Joe's forces, the tone shifts back toward epic warfare. These sequences feel grand and chaotic. The scale of destruction increases, and the narrative expands beyond Furiosa's personal story. Yet the film never loses sight of her perspective. Even during massive conflicts, the camera and storytelling remain emotionally centered on her journey. One of the most effective tonal transitions occurs after the death of Praetorian Jack. The film moves from hope to devastation. However, instead of descending into uncontrolled rage, the tone becomes focused and cold. Furiosa's grief transforms into controlled determination. This shift marks her evolution from reactive survivor to strategic warrior. The mood becomes more deliberate and purposeful. Dementus's presence introduces moments of dark humor. His theatrical personality creates brief tonal contrasts within intense scenes. However, the humor never turns the film into parody. It highlights his instability and ego. The balance between his exaggerated behavior and Furiosa's restraint keeps the tone dynamic without losing seriousness. The final act carries the tone of a revenge drama. The focus narrows to Furiosa's confrontation with Dementus. The energy becomes tense rather than chaotic. Dialogue is sharp and minimal. Violence feels personal instead of large-scale. This tonal narrowing reinforces the emotional payoff of her long journey. Throughout the film, tone shifts are carefully controlled. The story moves from innocence to tragedy, from suspense to epic war, and from grief to calculated revenge. Each shift aligns with Furiosa's emotional state. Rather than feeling inconsistent, the transitions feel natural because they reflect character growth. Overall, Furiosa successfully blends multiple genre elements while maintaining coherence. It honors the action roots of the franchise but expands into deeper dramatic territory. Through controlled tone shifts and careful pacing, the film becomes more than spectacle. It becomes a mythic character-driven epic set within the framework of post-apocalyptic action cinema. Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, is more than a story about vehicles and survival in a desert wasteland. Beneath the explosions and war machines, the film explores powerful themes that give emotional depth to the action. At its heart, the story is about loss, resilience, identity, power, and the search for freedom in a world defined by control and scarcity. One of the strongest themes is the loss of innocence. The film begins in the green place, a rare symbol of life and balance. Young Furiosa lives in safety, surrounded by community and nature. This peaceful beginning is important because it creates contrast. When she is kidnapped and forced to witness her mother's execution, her childhood ends instantly. The story shows how trauma can shape a person's entire life. Furiosa's innocence does not simply disappear. It transforms into determination. Resilience is another central theme. Furiosa survives in environments designed to break people. She loses her home, her mother, her freedom, and later her mentor. She even loses her arm. Yet she does not surrender. The film repeatedly shows that survival is not only physical strength. It is mental endurance. Furiosa adapts to every situation. She observes, learns, and waits for the right moment to act. Her resilience becomes her greatest weapon. The theme of identity runs throughout the narrative. After being taken from the Green Place, Furiosa is forced to hide who she is. At the Citadel, she disguises herself to avoid exploitation. For years, she cannot openly claim her past. This hidden identity creates internal tension. She carries memories of her true home while living among enemies. Over time, she rebuilds her identity not as a victim but as a warrior. Her journey is about reclaiming control over who she chooses to be. Power and control form another major theme. The Wasteland is ruled by warlords who dominate resources. Immortan Joe controls water. Dementus seeks control through chaos and intimidation. Their leadership styles are different, but both are rooted in dominance. The film explores how power can corrupt and destabilize. Dementus begins as charismatic and confident, but his ambition leads to insecurity and collapse. In contrast, Furiosa's approach to power is strategic and patient. She understands systems before she challenges them. Freedom is the emotional goal driving the story. Furiosa's dream of returning to the Green Place represents more than physical escape. It symbolizes autonomy. She wants to live without chains, without fear, and without being treated as property. Even when she rises within Immortan Joe's ranks, her desire for freedom remains alive. The film suggests that true freedom requires both strength and timing. The idea of adaptation also plays a key role. The Wasteland is harsh and constantly changing. Survival depends on flexibility. When Furiosa loses her arm, she does not allow the injury to define her as weak. She replaces it with a mechanical limb. This physical adaptation reflects a deeper emotional truth. She reshapes herself in response to pain. The film presents adaptation as necessary for growth. Another important theme is memory. The Green Place exists in Furiosa's mind as a symbol of hope. Even when it feels distant or unreachable, the memory guides her decisions. The story suggests that remembering where you come from can provide strength in difficult times. Ultimately, the core message of Furiosa is that strength is forged through hardship. The film does not glorify suffering, but it shows how endurance and patience can transform pain into purpose. Furiosa's journey proves that even in a broken world, individuals can shape their destiny through resilience, strategy, and unwavering determination. Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, is filled with powerful symbolism that deepens its emotional and thematic impact. While the film works as a direct action story on the surface, many of its images, locations, and character choices carry hidden meanings. George Miller uses visual storytelling to communicate ideas about power, survival, identity, and rebirth without always stating them directly. The Green Place is the most important symbol in the film. It represents life, balance, and hope in a dying world. Surrounded by desert, it feels almost mythical. Its greenery and water stand in contrast to the harsh wasteland. Symbolically, it represents innocence and origin. For Furiosa, it is not just a physical location but a spiritual anchor. Even after she is taken away, the memory of the Green Place guides her decisions. It becomes a symbol of what humanity once was and what it could be again. The wasteland itself carries symbolic weight. Endless sand and empty horizons reflect emotional isolation and moral decay. The desert strips away comfort and exposes true nature. In this environment, survival depends on strength and strategy. Symbolically, the wasteland represents a world where traditional systems have collapsed. There is no law, only power. This setting forces characters to reveal who they truly are. Furiosa's missing arm is one of the film's strongest visual symbols. On a literal level, it is the result of violent conflict. On a symbolic level, it represents sacrifice and transformation. Losing her arm marks the final stage of her evolution from captive to warrior. Instead of allowing the loss to weaken her, she replaces it with a mechanical limb. This fusion of flesh and metal symbolizes adaptation. It shows how humanity in this world must merge with machinery to survive. Vehicles also carry symbolic meaning. War rigs and motorcycles are not just tools of transportation. They represent power and control. Whoever commands the strongest vehicle commands territory. The constant movement of convoys symbolizes instability. No settlement feels truly secure. Movement becomes survival. At the same time, Furiosa's mastery of driving represents her control over her own destiny. She does not remain a passenger in her life. She becomes the driver. Water is another recurring symbol. In the Citadel, water is controlled by Immortan Joe and released to the masses in limited amounts. This act symbolizes how rulers maintain dominance by controlling basic needs. Water represents life and power. Those who control it control society. Furiosa's connection to the green place, where water flows naturally, symbolizes freedom from oppression. Dementus serves as a symbolic figure of chaotic ambition. His theatrical behavior and exaggerated personality reflect unstable leadership. He craves recognition and authority but lacks true discipline. His rise and fall symbolize the danger of ego-driven power. In contrast, Furiosa's quiet strength represents stability and endurance. Fire also carries meaning. Explosions, burning vehicles, and flames appear throughout the film. Fire symbolizes destruction but also transformation. When Furiosa confronts her enemies, fire often surrounds the scene. It reflects the burning anger inside her. Yet fire also clears space for change, suggesting rebirth through destruction. The chapter-like structure of the film can be seen as symbolic of myth. Each phase of Furiosa's life feels like a legend being told. This storytelling approach reinforces the idea that she is becoming more than a person. She is becoming a symbol of resistance. Overall, the film's symbolism strengthens its narrative. The green place represents hope. The wasteland represents decay. The mechanical arm represents adaptation. Water represents power. Vehicles represent control. Through these layered images, Furiosa becomes not just a character but a symbol of resilience in a broken world. Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, may appear on the surface to be a high-intensity action film set in a fictional wasteland, but beneath the explosions and vehicle chases lies strong social and political commentary. The world of Mad Max has always reflected fears about environmental collapse, authoritarian control, and the breakdown of society. In this film, those themes are explored through the lens of power, gender, and survival. One of the clearest political messages involves resource control. In the wasteland, basic necessities such as water, fuel, and ammunition are controlled by powerful leaders. Immortan Joe rules the Citadel because he controls water. Gas Town produces fuel, and the Bullet Farm produces weapons. These resources determine political influence. This system mirrors real-world concerns about how governments and corporations control essential supplies. The film suggests that when resources become scarce, power concentrates in the hands of those willing to exploit others. Water, in particular, serves as a symbol of political manipulation. Immortan Joe releases it to the people in controlled bursts, keeping them dependent. This reflects how authoritarian leaders maintain dominance by controlling access to survival. The citizens are not empowered. They are kept desperate. The message is clear. Those who control resources control freedom. The film also presents commentary on gender dynamics. Furiosa's origin story highlights the exploitation of women within the Citadel. Women are treated as property or resources under Immortan Joe's rule. By focusing on Furiosa's rise to power, the story challenges that structure. She refuses to remain a victim. Her transformation into a leader represents resistance against a system designed to suppress her. The green place of many mothers offers an alternative model of society. It is led by women who cooperate rather than dominate. This community values balance and sustainability instead of conquest. In contrast to the violent male-led warlords of the wasteland, the green place represents a different cultural vision. The destruction of this sanctuary highlights how fragile peaceful systems can be in the face of aggression. Dementus, played by Chris Hemsworth, embodies chaotic populism. His leadership style relies on spectacle, ego, and emotional manipulation. He promises strength and excitement but ultimately brings instability. His rise and fall reflect the dangers of leaders who seek power for personal glory rather than collective stability. The film critiques this type of leadership by showing how quickly it collapses when faced with strategic opposition. Environmental collapse is another underlying theme. The wasteland is the result of overconsumption and destruction. The barren desert landscapes imply that society once failed to protect its environment. This setting functions as a warning. It suggests that unchecked exploitation of resources can lead to irreversible damage. The scarcity of water and fertile land reinforces this cautionary message. The film also comments on the idea of systemic oppression. The Citadel's hierarchy is rigid. Those at the top live in comfort, while those below struggle. Climbing this hierarchy requires either loyalty or rebellion. Furiosa chooses strategy. She works within the system long enough to understand it before challenging it. This reflects the idea that meaningful change often requires patience and intelligence rather than reckless defiance. Culturally, the film presents a world where myth and power are intertwined. Leaders create symbols and rituals to maintain control. Immortan Joe presents himself as a godlike figure. This mirrors how real-world systems sometimes rely on propaganda and image to sustain authority. Overall, Furiosa delivers commentary on authoritarianism, gender inequality, environmental destruction, and resource politics. Through its post-apocalyptic setting, it reflects real societal fears. The film uses fiction to explore serious issues, reminding viewers that power, when unchecked, can reshape entire civilizations. Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, is filled with powerful sequences that stay with the audience long after the credits roll. While the film contains massive action set pieces filled with roaring engines and explosive destruction, its most memorable moments are often driven by emotion and character turning points. These scenes do more than entertain. They define Furiosa's transformation and give emotional weight to every battle that unfolds across the wasteland. One of the earliest and most devastating scenes is the kidnapping of young Furiosa from the Green Place. The peaceful opening, filled with greenery and balance, makes the violent intrusion of Dementus's biker horde feel even more shocking. The sound of engines tearing through silence immediately signals that innocence is about to be destroyed. When Mary Jabassa chases after her daughter in a desperate attempt to save her, the tension rises with every passing second. Her determination shows the strength of a mother who refuses to surrender. The execution that follows is brutal and heartbreaking. Furiosa is forced to watch, powerless. This moment is not just tragic. It becomes the emotional foundation of the entire story. Every decision she makes later is rooted in this trauma. Another unforgettable sequence occurs when Furiosa first arrives at the Citadel. The towering fortress carved into rock feels overwhelming and mechanical. The moment Immortan Joe releases water to the desperate crowd below is visually striking. Citizens scramble and scream, reaching upward as if praying. The imbalance of power is clear in one powerful image. This scene establishes the cruel system Furiosa must survive within. It also plants the seed of her future rebellion against oppression. The first major convoy mission with Praetorian Jack stands out for both its scale and emotional significance. As the war rig rolls across the open desert, tension builds steadily. The horizon fills with approaching enemies. Motorcycles swarm like insects. Vehicles collide in carefully choreographed chaos. Fire and dust fill the screen. Yet what makes the sequence truly memorable is Furiosa's growing confidence. She is no longer just surviving. She is learning to command. When she takes control behind the wheel, the audience senses the beginning of her evolution into a leader. The quieter moments inside the war rig between Furiosa and Jack carry just as much impact as the explosions. Their bond forms through shared danger and quiet understanding. A simple glance or short exchange communicates trust. In a world defined by betrayal and violence, this partnership feels rare and meaningful. These scenes build emotional investments so that when tragedy strikes, it cuts deeper. One of the most shocking scenes in the film is the capture and execution of Praetorian Jack. The repetition of trauma mirrors the earlier death of Furiosa's mother. Once again, she is forced to witness someone she cares about taken from her. However, this time her reaction is different. Instead of collapsing in grief, she absorbs the pain. Her silence becomes colder. Her focus sharpens. This scene marks the final shift in her character. She is no longer a victim of chaos. She becomes someone who plans and waits for justice. The massive battle between Dementus's forces and Immortan Joe's empire is another unforgettable highlight. The sheer scale of destruction is overwhelming. War rigs crash through storms of sand while motorcycles leap across dunes. Fire explodes in every direction. The choreography is intense but clear, allowing the audience to follow every movement. This battle represents the peak of chaos in the film. It shows the cost of ambition and the instability of power driven by ego. The moment Furiosa loses her arm is both shocking and symbolic. The injury is sudden, painful, and violent. The aftermath lingers. Instead of retreating, she adapts. The later reveal of her mechanical arm becomes iconic. It symbolizes resilience and transformation. She does not hide her loss. She turns it into strength. This visual stays in the mind long after the scene ends. The final confrontation between Furiosa and Dementus is one of the most emotionally satisfying sequences in the film. Unlike earlier large-scale battles, this encounter is intimate and tense. The pacing slows. Dialogue becomes sharp and focused. The emotional weight of years of suffering hangs between them. When Furiosa finally takes control, it feels earned through patience and endurance. The scene closes the emotional circle that began with her mother's death. Lastly, the quiet closing moments that bridge directly into Fury Road are deeply memorable. There are no massive explosions here. Instead, there is quiet strength. Seeing Furiosa fully formed as the Imperator connects her origin to the larger saga. The weight of everything she endured is visible in her posture and expression. The transformation is complete, but the pain remains part of her. These scenes stand out not only for spectacle but for emotional depth. Each moment marks a turning point. Together, they shape Furiosa's journey from stolen child to powerful leader, creating images and emotions that stay with the audience long after the desert dust settles. Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, naturally invites comparison to Mad Max, Fury Road, since both films exist in the same universe and are directed by George Miller. However, while they share visual DNA, high-octane action, and thematic concerns about survival and power, the two movies differ significantly in structure, pacing, and emotional focus. Fury Road is built around a relentless forward chase. Its story unfolds almost entirely in real time, driven by urgency and constant movement. Furiosa, on the other hand, is structured as a long-form epic. It spans many years, explores political shifts between rival warlords, and centers deeply on character transformation. The pacing is more deliberate, and the emotional development is more layered. In Fury Road, Furiosa is already a fully formed warrior. She is confident, capable, and decisive from the moment she appears on screen. Her motivations are clear but mostly implied. The audience understands that she wants to escape Immortan Joe and protect the wives, but her past remains largely mysterious. That mystery gives her character a mythic presence. In Furiosa, the audience witnesses the events that shape her into that warrior. The kidnapping, the trauma, the captivity, and the loss are all shown in detail. This makes the newer film feel more intimate and tragic. Where Fury Road thrives on urgency and forward motion, Furiosa thrives on endurance and internal evolution. The action in both films is intense, but the newer installment allows space for reflection between battles. Fury Road feels like a pressure cooker that never releases steam. Furiosa feels like a slow burn that builds toward transformation. In Fury Road, the structure is simple and direct: escape and return. In Furiosa, the structure unfolds in chapters, almost like a myth being told over time. This difference gives each film a distinct identity, even though they share the same world. Looking further back, Furiosa also connects thematically to the Road Warrior, the second film in the original Mad Max trilogy. That movie explored survival in a resource-starved desert controlled by violent gangs fighting over fuel. Both films depict societies formed around scarce resources such as gasoline and water. However, the Road Warrior focused primarily on Max as a lone anti-hero who remains emotionally detached. Furiosa shifts the perspective to a character whose journey is rooted in memory, loss, and personal revenge. It feels more emotionally driven and less centered on isolation. Max in the early films drifts through chaos. Furiosa actively shapes her destiny within it. Beyond the Mad Max franchise, Furiosa shares similarities with other post-apocalyptic films like The Road and Children of Men. Like The Road, it portrays a harsh world where survival often comes at a moral cost. Both films emphasize how environment shapes human behavior. Scarcity forces characters to make difficult choices. However, Furiosa adds large-scale action and mythic elements that make it more stylized. The Road is quiet and deeply grounded in realism, focusing on intimate father and son survival. Furiosa is louder and more operatic, using spectacle to explore similar emotional terrain. Compared to Children of Men, Furiosa shares the theme of hope surviving within collapse. In Children of Men, hope appears through the possibility of new life in a broken society. In Furiosa, hope survives in the memory of the green place and the dream of freedom. Yet Children of Men presents its world with grounded political realism, while Furiosa embraces heightened villains, exaggerated machines, and symbolic imagery. The film also resembles epic revenge dramas. Its structure mirrors classic revenge stories in which trauma fuels long-term pursuit. Movies like Gladiator and Kill Bill share this core idea. In Gladiator, personal loss drives Maximus toward calculated revenge against a corrupt ruler. In Kill Bill, a woman trains and evolves before confronting those who betrayed her. Furiosa follows a similar path but places it within a dystopian action landscape filled with warlords and convoys. Unlike those films, however, it emphasizes patience and strategic positioning over immediate retaliation. Furiosa waits, adapts, and studies before she strikes. George Miller's broader filmography also provides interesting comparisons. Outside the Mad Max series, Miller directed films such as Babe and Happy Feet. At first glance, these projects seem completely unrelated to a violent desert saga. However, they reveal his consistent interest in themes of survival, belonging, and leadership within structured societies. In Happy Feet, for example, the central character challenges rigid traditions to find his identity. Furiosa explores similar ideas in a darker context. She moves through oppressive systems before ultimately challenging them. Visually, Furiosa maintains Miller's signature style of bold color contrast and kinetic camera movement. Compared to many modern action films that rely heavily on glossy digital imagery, Miller's work stands out for its emphasis on practical stunts and physical environments. This commitment aligns Furiosa more closely with classic action filmmaking from earlier decades rather than contemporary CGI-driven blockbusters. Overall, Furiosa honors its franchise roots while expanding its emotional and narrative scope. It bridges the relentless intensity of Fury Road with the mythic storytelling of epic revenge dramas. At the same time, it reflects George Miller's long-standing interest in resilience, identity, power, and survival within collapsing systems. The film stands as both a continuation of the Mad Max legacy and a distinct, emotionally rich chapter within it. The ending of Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, brings the story full circle, completing the emotional journey that began with a stolen child in the green place. From the very first act, the film plants the seed of trauma that will define Furiosa's path. The final act returns to that seed and shows how it has grown into something powerful and unbreakable. While the movie delivers large-scale action, political rivalry, and desert warfare throughout its runtime, the conclusion narrows its focus to something deeply personal: Furiosa's confrontation with Dementus and the final step in her transformation into the Imperator we later see in Fury Road. After years of survival, loss, and calculated patience, Furiosa finally positions herself to face the man responsible for the destruction of her childhood. By this point in the story, she is no longer the frightened girl forced to watch her mother die. She is battle-hardened, observant, and emotionally disciplined. Every hardship she endured has sharpened her instincts. Dementus, in contrast, is no longer the bold and theatrical warlord who once commanded a massive biker army. His influence has weakened. His authority has cracks. His chaotic ambition has begun to collapse under its own weight. This reversal of strength is crucial to understanding the power of the ending. When Furiosa captures Dementus, the film deliberately slows its pace. The loud chaos of earlier battles fades into a tense stillness. There are no roaring convoys dominating the frame, no massive armies clashing in the background. Instead, the confrontation feels intimate and controlled. This tonal shift signals that the story has reached its emotional core. This is not just another action set piece. It is the resolution of a wound that has defined her life. Dementus represents the origin of Furiosa's suffering. He is the symbol of stolen innocence, lost family, and broken safety. By facing him directly, she reclaims agency over the event that shaped her. The power dynamic has shifted completely. Years ago, she stood powerless as he decided her fate. Now, she stands over him with complete control. The film emphasizes this reversal through framing and pacing. The audience feels the weight of the moment. Instead of delivering explosive revenge in a burst of uncontrolled rage, Furiosa chooses a measured response. This decision reflects her growth. Early in her life, trauma left her vulnerable and reactive. Now, she acts with precision. Her justice is deliberate. It is not about emotional release alone. It is about balance and closure. By refusing to let anger dictate her actions, she demonstrates mastery over her past. The ending reinforces the theme of transformation that runs throughout the film. Furiosa has lost almost everything: her home in the Green Place, her mother, her mentor Praetorian Jack, and even her arm. Each loss could have broken her spirit. Instead, each loss reshaped her identity. Her mechanical arm becomes one of the strongest symbols in the final scenes. It represents adaptation. It shows that damage does not equal defeat. She has turned injury into strength. However, the film wisely avoids presenting her revenge as a solution to the larger problems of the Wasteland. Dementus falls, but the system remains. Immortan Joe still controls the Citadel. Water is still rationed. Society is still built on exploitation and scarcity. This detail is important. The ending makes it clear that personal closure does not automatically change a corrupt world. Furiosa's victory is internal rather than global. This nuance adds depth to the story. It prepares the audience for the events of Fury Road. Viewers who know what happens next understand that this is only the beginning of her larger rebellion. Her experience in Furiosa explains why she eventually risks everything to rescue Immortan Joe's wives. She knows what it means to have freedom stolen. She knows what it means to dream of a better place. Her actions in Fury Road are no longer mysterious. They are the natural continuation of her evolution. The final images of the film carry quiet strength. Furiosa stands not as a victim, but as a leader. There is no celebration, no grand speech. Instead, there is resolve. The camera captures her composure, her focus, and the weight she carries. She has endured unimaginable suffering, yet she remains standing. That endurance is the true victory. On a deeper level, the ending can be interpreted as a meditation on reclaiming identity after trauma. Furiosa cannot undo what happened in the Green Place. She cannot bring her mother back. She cannot restore the exact life she lost. But she can choose how she responds to that pain. By confronting Dementus and surviving the brutal world around her, she proves that identity is not defined by tragedy alone. It is shaped by resilience and choice. Ultimately, the ending of Furiosa is both satisfying and restrained. It closes the emotional arc without pretending that the Wasteland has been healed. In a universe defined by scarcity and power struggles, victories are personal rather than universal. Furiosa's triumph lies not in saving the world, but in mastering herself. That mastery is what makes her legend powerful and lasting. Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, was one of the most ambitious action films of 2024, and its budget clearly reflected that scale and vision. The production reportedly cost between $160 and $170 million, placing it firmly in blockbuster territory. For a character-driven prequel set in a harsh desert world, that is a significant investment. However, when examining the scale of the film, the size of the budget begins to make sense. This was not a small, contained story. It was an epic saga involving massive action sequences, custom-built vehicles, large casts, and demanding shooting conditions. A large portion of the budget went toward practical effects and physical production design. George Miller is known for prioritizing real stunts and tangible environments over fully digital backdrops. Instead of relying heavily on green screens, the production team constructed enormous war rigs, modified trucks, custom motorcycles, and large mechanical props that could function on real terrain. These machines were not simple set pieces. Many were engineered to perform complex movements at high speeds across desert landscapes. Building, testing, and maintaining such vehicles required significant financial resources. Filming in Australia added another layer of cost. While Australia offers vast desert locations that fit the Mad Max universe perfectly, shooting in remote areas presents logistical challenges. Transporting heavy equipment, housing cast and crew, and working under extreme heat conditions all increase production expenses. Long days in difficult weather require additional safety measures and careful planning. These factors may not always be visible on screen, but they contribute heavily to the overall budget. The post-production process also demanded time and money. Although Furiosa relies heavily on practical stunts, visual effects were still used to enhance scale, extend environments, and refine action sequences. Digital effects helped expand armies, intensify dust storms, and remove safety rigs from complex stunt work. Combining practical footage with digital enhancements requires skilled artists and a lengthy editing process, which further increases costs. Marketing expenses added even more to the financial commitment. As a prequel to the critically acclaimed Mad Max, Fury Road, the film carried enormous expectations. Fury Road had won multiple Academy Awards and earned a reputation as one of the greatest action films of the modern era. The studio positioned Furiosa as both a continuation of that legacy and a standalone origin story. Promotional campaigns emphasized the epic scope, Anya Taylor-Joy's physical transformation into the younger Furiosa, and Chris Hemsworth's dramatic reinvention as the villain Dementus. Global marketing campaigns, trailers, posters, and press tours required substantial funding. When Furiosa was released theatrically in May 2024, it entered a competitive box office landscape. The theatrical market had shifted significantly since Fury Road's release in 2015. Streaming platforms had grown in popularity, and audience habits had changed. While fans of the franchise were eager to return to the Wasteland, casual viewers were more selective about theater attendance. Opening weekend numbers in North America were moderate rather than explosive. Compared to Fury Road's performance in 2015, Furiosa did not open as strongly. International markets provided stronger support, particularly in regions with a strong appetite for large-scale action films. However, the worldwide total still fell short of what studios typically expect from a production with such a high budget. By the end of its theatrical run, global earnings were considered underwhelming relative to its production and marketing costs. Industry analysts suggested that breaking even would require a higher total, especially when accounting for distribution and promotional expenses. Several factors were discussed when analyzing the box office outcome. Some audiences viewed Furiosa as a prequel rather than a direct sequel, which may have reduced urgency. Others felt that without the character of Max Rokitansky at the center, the story might not appeal to broader audiences. The intense and gritty tone also limited family attendance. Additionally, competition from other major releases during the same period likely affected ticket sales. Despite these financial challenges, the film received largely positive critical reviews. Many critics praised George Miller's ambitious storytelling, the bold narrative structure, and the commitment to practical action. Anya Taylor-Joy was widely recognized for carrying the emotional core of the film, while Chris Hemsworth earned praise for his unexpected and theatrical villain performance. Critics appreciated the film's willingness to expand the Mad Max mythology instead of simply repeating the formula of Fury Road. Audience reactions were more mixed but generally respectful. Hardcore fans admired the world-building and emotional depth. Some viewers missed the non-stop intensity of Fury Road, while others valued the slower, character-focused approach. Over time, discussion shifted away from box office numbers and toward artistic impact. Ultimately, Furiosa stands as a bold and expensive chapter in the Mad Max saga. While its financial performance may not have matched expectations, its craftsmanship, ambition, and performances secured its place as a significant entry in modern action cinema. Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, is a film that reveals more layers with each viewing. On the surface, it delivers explosive action, roaring engines, massive convoy battles, and emotionally intense confrontations. For many viewers, the first experience is overwhelming in the best possible way. The scale, the sound design, and the raw physical energy of the film leave a strong immediate impression. But unlike action films that depend only on shock value or surprise twists, Furiosa is built with depth. Its structure, symbolism, character arcs, and visual storytelling encourage repeat viewings. Each time the film is revisited, new details emerge. On an initial watch, audiences are naturally drawn to the spectacle. The convoy chases across endless desert landscapes are thrilling. Vehicles collide, flip, and explode in carefully choreographed chaos. The practical stunt work feels tangible and dangerous. The battle between Dementus' forces and Immortan Joe's empire is visually massive. Fire, dust, and metal dominate the screen. For many viewers, these moments define their first impression of the film. However, on a second or third viewing, attention shifts. The audience begins to notice the quieter details between the explosions. Small facial expressions become more meaningful. The way Furiosa watches and studies her surroundings in early scenes reveals her survival instincts. The subtle tension in Praetorian Jack's voice during private conversations becomes clearer. Even the way Dementus carries himself early in the film hints at insecurity beneath his theatrical confidence. These small moments can easily be overlooked during the intensity of a first watch, but they stand out during repeat viewings. The film's chapter-based structure also rewards revisiting. Because the story spans many years, it unfolds in distinct stages of Furiosa's life. Watching it again allows viewers to better appreciate how carefully each stage builds toward the next. The transition from innocence in the green place to captivity, to training, to strategic leadership feels more deliberate when seen with knowledge of the ending. The pacing may feel slower on the first viewing compared to Fury Road, but on repeat watches, that pacing feels intentional and meaningful. One of the strongest reasons for the film's rewatch value is its emotional depth. The early scenes in the green place carry far more weight once viewers understand how deeply that memory shapes Furiosa's identity. Her connection to that place is not just nostalgia. It is the emotional anchor of her life. When rewatching, the kidnapping and her mother's execution feel even more tragic because the audience knows how long that trauma will echo. The repetition of loss throughout the film becomes more noticeable. The death of Praetorian Jack mirrors the earlier loss of her mother, reinforcing the cycle of trauma. At the same time, rewatching highlights Furiosa's growth in response to that trauma. On the first watch, her transformation into a hardened warrior feels powerful. On subsequent viewings, viewers can trace the exact moments where her emotional armor forms. The shift in her posture, her increasing silence, and her measured reactions to violence show a clear progression. Her resilience becomes more impressive when the audience sees how early wounds shape later strength. The performances also benefit greatly from repeat viewing. Anya Taylor-Joy delivers a restrained and controlled performance. She does not rely on dramatic speeches or emotional breakdowns. Instead, her acting is built on subtlety. The tension in her eyes, the stillness in her movements, and the calm in her voice communicate more than loud expressions ever could. On a second viewing, these subtle details stand out. Her quiet intensity feels even more layered. Chris Hemsworth's performance as Dementus also reveals additional nuance on rewatch. At first glance, he appears purely chaotic and theatrical. His exaggerated behavior can seem almost larger than life. However, when watching again, viewers may notice how his confidence gradually cracks. His early bravado contrasts sharply with his later instability. The progression from charismatic leader to weakened tyrant becomes clearer when the audience already knows his fate. The film's themes deepen with time. On the surface, it appears to be a revenge story set in a post-apocalyptic world. But repeated viewings reveal a more complex exploration of power, identity, and adaptation. The symbolism of water, for example, becomes more apparent. Water represents control and life within the citadel. Immortan Joe's ability to release it in controlled bursts symbolizes his dominance. Rewatching the water scenes after understanding the political structure adds a new layer of meaning. The mechanical arm is another powerful symbol that becomes richer with repetition. On a first watch, it stands out as a dramatic visual. On later viewings, it represents transformation. Furiosa's injury does not weaken her. It forces adaptation. The mechanical arm becomes a physical manifestation of resilience. It shows how she merges vulnerability with strength. The green place itself evolves from a simple location into a symbol of lost balance. On repeat viewings, it feels less like just a memory and more like a guiding force in Furiosa's decisions. Her desire to return there explains her willingness to risk everything later in Fury Road. Watching both films together increases their impact. Furiosa's origin story enhances every choice she makes in the 2015 film. Her determination to free Immortan Joe's wives feels even more personal after witnessing her own captivity. Beyond character and symbolism, the world-building rewards attention. Background details in the Citadel, Gas Town, and the Bullet Farm reveal political relationships that may not be fully clear at first. The design of vehicles reflects faction identity. Even costume details tell small stories about survival and hierarchy. Each revisit allows the audience to absorb more of this carefully crafted environment. From an audience takeaway perspective, the film leaves a lasting message about resilience. Furiosa's journey shows that trauma does not define destiny. Pain shapes her, but it does not control her. She chooses how to respond. This message resonates more deeply after spending time with the film more than once. The movie also encourages reflection on systems of power. By portraying leaders who manipulate resources and control populations, it invites viewers to think about authority and dependency in broader contexts. These ideas linger long after the final scene. While the intense tone and heavy subject matter may not make it an easy comfort watch, its craftsmanship ensures long-term value. It is a film that rewards patience and attention. The balance between spectacle and substance gives it staying power. Ultimately, Furiosa holds strong rewatch value because it operates on multiple levels. It delivers thrilling action on the surface while offering emotional and thematic complexity underneath. Each viewing uncovers new details, deeper connections, and stronger appreciation for the character's transformation. The audience takeaway remains powerful. Survival requires adaptation. Strength comes from resilience, and reclaiming control over one's story is the greatest victory of all. Furiosa, a Mad Max Saga was released in theaters in May 2024 as a major cinematic event, positioned as one of the most visually ambitious action films of the year. From the start, it was clear that this was not designed to be a small-screen experience. George Miller crafted the film with scale in mind. The vast desert landscapes, towering war machines, explosive convoy battles, and immersive sound design were all built to be felt as much as seen. Watching it in a theater allows audiences to experience the full intensity of the Wasteland in a way that simply cannot be replicated on smaller screens. In a theatrical environment, the size of the frame matters. The desert does not just look wide. It feels endless. The Citadel rises like a monument of control and power, dominating the screen. War rigs thunder across sand with physical weight. The rumble of engines vibrates through theater seats. Explosions echo with force through surround sound systems. The carefully layered sound design surrounds the viewer, from subtle wind gusts to roaring metal collisions. In this setting, the audience becomes immersed inside the world rather than observing it from a distance. During its theatrical run, Furiosa was offered in multiple formats. Standard digital screenings were available in most cinemas worldwide, delivering strong visual clarity and balanced sound. However, premium formats elevated the experience further. IMAX screenings presented the film on larger screens with expanded aspect ratios in select scenes. This increased the scale of desert shots and convoy sequences, making the Wasteland feel even more overwhelming. Dolby Cinema versions enhanced contrast, brightness, and audio depth. Blacks appeared deeper, highlights sharper, and the surround sound mix more dynamic. For viewers seeking maximum immersion, these premium large-format options provided the most powerful version of the film. IMAX screenings especially amplified the visual spectacle. The wide desert horizons stretched across massive screens, enhancing the sense of isolation and danger. Action sequences felt more intense because the viewer's field of vision was almost entirely filled. Dolby Cinema emphasized sound precision. Engine roars felt layered and directional. Explosions had depth rather than simple loudness. The musical score carried emotional weight through clean, balanced audio. After completing its theatrical window, Furiosa transitioned into home viewing formats. Like most major studio releases, it became available for digital rental and digital purchase. Rental options typically allowed viewers to stream the film for a limited window, often 48 hours once playback began. Digital purchase provided permanent access within a user's digital library on platforms compatible with smart televisions, gaming consoles, tablets, computers, and streaming devices. Home viewing offers flexibility. Viewers can pause, rewind, or replay specific scenes. For a film with layered storytelling and symbolic detail, this is valuable. Watching a second time at home allows audiences to focus on subtle performances and background world-building that may have been missed in theaters. Dialogue exchanges, small gestures, and design elements become easier to study in a controlled environment. Physical media editions were also released for collectors and enthusiasts. Blu-ray and 4K Ultra HD formats deliver higher bitrates and more consistent image quality than compressed streaming versions. On a compatible 4K television, the desert tones appear richer, metallic surfaces sharper, and shadows more detailed. High dynamic range enhances contrast between bright sunlight and dark fortress interiors. Advanced audio formats such as Dolby Atmos preserve the film's immersive sound mix. Physical copies often include bonus features. Behind-the-scenes documentaries reveal how practical stunts were executed. Featurettes explore vehicle construction, costume design, and the blending of practical and digital effects. Cast interviews offer insight into character development. For dedicated fans, these extras deepen appreciation for the craftsmanship behind the film. When choosing how to watch Furiosa at home, the viewing setup significantly affects the experience. A large screen enhances scale. A high-quality sound system improves immersion. Surround sound setups help replicate the layered audio environment intended by the filmmakers. Even quality headphones can improve clarity when speakers are not available. Watching on a small mobile device with limited audio reduces the sensory impact, especially during action-heavy scenes. Lighting conditions also matter. Watching in a darkened room helps preserve contrast and detail. Distractions such as phone notifications can interrupt immersion. Because the film spans years and contains emotional shifts, focused attention enhances understanding. The film carries a mature rating due to intense violence, disturbing imagery, and emotionally heavy themes. Viewers should be aware of this before planning a group viewing. The content is aimed at mature audiences comfortable with intense action and darker subject matter. For newcomers, Furiosa functions effectively as a standalone origin story. It explains the background of a major character without requiring prior knowledge. However, pairing it with Mad Max, Fury Road enhances both films. Watching Furiosa first adds emotional depth to Fury Road. Watching Fury Road first creates curiosity that Furiosa later answers. Either viewing order offers value. Because it was produced by a major studio, Furiosa eventually rotates onto subscription-based streaming services depending on regional licensing agreements. Availability can vary by country and over time. Viewers should check official platforms for current streaming access. Ultimately, Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, can be experienced in theaters, through premium large formats, via digital rental or purchase, on physical media, or through streaming services when available. While home viewing offers convenience, the film's scale, craftsmanship, and sound design are most powerful on the largest screen possible with strong audio support. Regardless of format, its story of survival, resilience, and transformation remains impactful when given full attention and immersion. If you like this video, don't forget to hit the like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more gripping movie explanations like this.